Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture on Mary Astell's Serious Proposal to the Ladies. This is a work which was written by Mary Astell, and she has been regarded by many as the first feminist, and I term her the forgotten feminist. And she wrote this work, A Serious Proposal to the Ladies, which is not much talked about. She wrote it in 1694, and in this PPT, in this presentation and session, we are going to analyze whether or not Mary Astell truly was a feminist, whether she wrote in line with the ideals of feminism that we have today, or whether she had some other agenda behind writing this work. Okay, so let us start with the presentation, and this is a presentation that I've made from scratch, of course, taking information from the internet, many research papers, and I've read the actual text, so you can really rely on this information. Let's begin. So, Mary Astell, she was situated in 17th century England, and it is assumed that a good deal of Mary's education can be attributed to her wide readings, right? So, an uncle of hers actually was responsible for her early education, but after his demise, Lady Catherine Jones of Chelsea is said to have introduced Mary to a number of influential and well educated women who shared an interest in changing the status of women all over. So from this circle that she had as a child, as a young woman, she perhaps got influenced, and she started to write about women and what she expected the role of women to be. Okay, so this is a photograph of her. Now, these early group of intellectual women writers with whom Mary was associated, they were later termed as proto-feminists. So, proto-feminism is basically a term given to those women who that feminism was not really in fashion at that time. Feminism did not originate. So before feminism actually took place and it was established as a movement, the earliest group of writers of women who resonated with this idea of feminism, of female empowerment or women empowerment, they were termed as proto-feminists. Okay, so however, due to the following reasons, now this is very important that we consider Mary Astell as a forgotten feminist or the first feminist, she's termed by many, but it is also important to note why she's not really that much discussed in the popular academia. Okay, so this discrepancy arises due to Astell's conflicting intellectual commitments. In addition to her belief in women's inherent intellectual potential and her thorough exploration of the perils of oppressive husbands, Mary Astell was a staunch High Tory. So Tories and Whigs, Tories were the ones who supported the monarchy, and Whigs, they supported the parliamentary kind of government and system. So she was a Tory, and they were really not that much popular at that time. And she was a conservative pamphleteer and an advocate for the doctrine of passive obedience. Okay, so there are many contradictions in her thoughts and in her commitments, and we can see that in this discussion as well when we proceed further. So even during their initial publication, her strongest political views may have seemed outdated and out of touch. So even during the Okay, so even during the initial publication of many of her works, her strongest political views may have seemed outdated and out of touch with the prevailing beliefs of the time. Okay, so we can keep this point also aside, what her personal views and political aspirations or perspectives were. But what really comes into notice here is her emphasis on religion, right? She was a devout Christian woman, and she really connects this idea of womanhood to the idea of what is a devout Christian woman, right? So this conflict is there, that she, on one hand, she's focusing upon female empowerment and enlarging women's minds, but on the other hand, she's also depending upon religion to give women this idea of what a virtuous woman is, and how women should follow that path, okay, of virtue, of ingenuity. Okay, so this is a conflict that is there because religion too focuses upon or really imposes many restrictions on women. It has done so from it has been doing so since like forever. For forever it has done so. So this is what we are talking about, this contradiction that we'll see in this work also, which is a serious proposal to the ladies. Now, Hannah Smith, in her book Mary Astell, A Serious Proposal to the Ladies and the Anglican Reformation of Manners in Late 17th Century England, this is her work, she defines her Astell's views in the following manner. Mary Astell was famed as a devoted member of the Church of England, who went on to write several explicit defenses of the Church's position during the period of transition when it no longer came to have a monopoly on English spiritual rights. So Mary Astell, what she did, that she was a devout Christian woman, she was associated with the church, and she used her pen to protect and defend the church. So this is why we have to read this work and analyze this work from this perspective also, and not just from a feminist perspective. We have to really look into this work as a sort of propaganda or an agenda also of some sorts, that why this imposition on the importance of church, the importance of virtue, the importance of ingenuity in the lives of women was upheld by Mary Astell, right? So the serious proposal to the ladies can be read as both reflecting Astell's anxieties over the future of the church and as a product of the mounting Anglican concern with the vice and irreligion of society. So, this work really could be her attempt to instill morality back into society, and she would have wanted morality which was slowly disintegrating and going away from society to get back into the very foundation of it. Okay, so women were they were the builders of families. They were supposed to uphold the ideals of virtue, the ideals of morality. And when she saw that these middle class women specifically, they times were changing, so probably she wanted to push that agenda of how women must be in line with the religious ideals and be in touch with God, and that is why they should uphold virtue and expand their mind so that they can be devout, dutiful Christian women and really strive away from passions and follow what God has intended mankind to be. Okay, that is the highest achievement of purity, of piety, and everything that is related with virtue. So this is how we have to see this work. Yes, so the serious proposal to the ladies can be read as both reflecting Astell's anxieties over the future of the church and as a product of the mounting Anglican concern with the vice and irreligion of society. In her proposals, Astell had predecessors, for there existed considerable concern amongst the Anglican clergy and laity about the piety and morality of the female elite and the likeness of what passed in the language of this loose age as a lady's religion. Okay, so this work was or very well could be an attempt to bring back that morality of the Christian church which was disintegrating, and we'll know why, the reasons for that. Okay. So, during the early 1700s, she withdrew from public life and dedicated herself to planning and managing a charitable school for girls. And Astell is primarily remembered as one of England's inaugural advocates for women's rights, and some commentators consider her to have been the first English feminist. Okay, a serious proposal to the ladies. Now, before moving on, I'd like to throw light upon some historical aspects or details of what was the time like in which Astell started to write this work. Okay, so the times or the time of the 1690s 1690s were full of wars, inflation, economic crisis, etc. And religion too had faced a blow. The Glorious Revolution had happened in 1688 to 1689, and religion really faced a lot of devastation, and people started to question many things. So, in such time, the Glorious Revolution, I'd like to comment here that it overthrew King James II, and it overthrew the Catholic monarchy and established the Anglicanism as an established church. So more and more freedom was now given to nonconformists, and this was a very important turn in English history. Okay, so now religion also had, a destabilizing kind of a base, and people now could have been moving towards immorality, which is why this work could have been or possibly was written in order to instill that morality back into society. So there are two ways on the basis of which we can read and decipher this work. First is the feminist point of view, and the second is this point of view of instilling the morality back. And I feel that this second point of view is apt. However, we cannot totally negate this whole idea of feminist criticism. We cannot just negate this idea, because there are very crucial points that Mary is talking about in this work, and will now move over to them. Okay. So this work, its full title is A Serious Proposal to the Ladies for the Advancement of Their True and Greatest Interest. It appeared in two parts in 1694. Okay. Um, Astell begins by advocating the need of women to pass men in virtue and ingenuity. Okay, so she says that as women, it is our duty and responsibility that we have to pass men, we have to overcome them, we have to overpower them in virtue and ingenuity. She claims that the aim of a proposal, now the very start you see is a very kind of a didactic, a moralistic tone. It begins with, this moralistic and didactic tone. And it is important because she continues to say that the aim of a proposal is to fix that beauty, to make it is to fix that beauty, like the beauty of woman, to make it lasting and permanent, which nature, with all the helps of art, cannot secure, and to place it out of the reach of sickness and old age by transferring it from a corruptible body to an immortal mind. An obliging design which would procure them inward beauty to whom nature has unkindly denied the outward, and not permit those ladies who have comely bodies to tarnish their glory with deformed souls. So you can really see the sarcasm, the wit of Astell in these lines also, and you can see that how she's pushing that agenda that women are beautiful, but to surpass that beauty and to go, beyond that beauty, it is important to rear in ourselves and develop in ourselves as women virtue and ingenuity. So this is her point of view that she is pushing. Okay, so she says that you should develop in yourselves the inward beauty, and how that inward beauty will be developed, that is possible only by developing in yourselves virtue and ingenuity. Okay, so it is evident here that Astell's argument begins not by establishing women as self-sufficient beings, rather by comparing them to men. So this is a point against feminist criticism that we can see in this work, and we can really see how the note with which she begins this work itself is sufficient to say what she is going to talk about further. So Astell wants women not only be as lovely but as wise as angels. So this is a problematic stance, we can say, but this is again her perspective, and she is writing in relation to her times. So she wants women not only to be beautiful but also as wise as angels. So this comparison of women to angels and fairies and godmothers is very it puts women on extremes as evil and good. So this is problematic in feminist criticism, but here she is talking about that women should not only be beautiful, but they should also enlarge their mind. They should also enlarge their minds and be as wise as angels. So these initial arguments reveal Astell not as a feminist of today, rather as a devout Christian who is trying to re-establish the morality of her sex, which was diminishing in the 1690s. Okay, so this I have already talked about. Now, Astell, however, asks women to rise above the concept of beauty. Again, we have talked about this, and move towards a reflection on their own thoughts. This could very well be a point for feminist criticism. So, what she says, that this is what she says in the work, and this is an example of her wit and sarcasm and her commentary, that just looking at your looking glass and just looking at your mirror will not do much of the work. You have to reflect upon your thoughts, and this is where she comes off as this feminist icon, where she says that do away with your outward shows and appearances and move beyond that. So this is why this could very well be a point for feminist criticism, that she wants women to go beyond their ordinary knickknacks and go really deep into their own reflections of their minds. This work, however, and her thoughts do carry many contradictions, such as she again brings the point of how women should resort to virtuous lives. Okay, so as they reach heaven, in her words, it is the only place worth contending for. Okay, so this idea that women have to resort to heaven, and all this could very well, be meant not only for women but for men also. She would have had that same idea, but here she's talking about specifically for women, and this is where it becomes sort of a problematic statement. That why should only women bear the burden of being virtuous and moralistic and should strive for heaven, so the attempt on Astor's part therefore is not to establish female independence, rather preach a code of conduct in line with the ideals of the church. Okay, so the following lines best represent Astor's arguments in the essay. So she says, even the men, as exact as they would seem, and as much as they divert themselves with our miscarriages, are very often guilty of greater faults, and such as, considering the advantages they enjoy, are much more inexcusable. So she is saying here that the faults of men are much more, they cannot be excused as easily because they carry so many other advantages. So as a woman, she is really aware of the position women hold in society and how women have many disadvantages, have to carry many disadvantages just because they are a different sex in society. So she is aware of that very fact, and she is very sarcastic and witty in her remarks. So this is a very important stylistic note that you can really write about Mary Aston. So you can really see the sarcasm and wit that she displays in her writings. So here she says that I would have you live up to the dignity of your nature and express your thankfulness to God for the benefits you enjoy by due improvement of them. So she is saying that as women, we have a certain nature that is given to us by God, and by polishing those qualities and virtues that are natural in us, we will be able to reach God in a better manner, and that would be the perfect and the most improved state of our sex, of our gender, of our nature. So this is our argument in the entire essay, this improvement of our nature as women. So Astell asks the women to rise above their ignorance as well, and this is a point where she brings about the importance of education, the importance of philosophy, the importance of moving beyond just novels and romances. And she says that women must read philosophy, and they should read French philosophers, and they should enlarge in their minds. So this is where this whole idea of how women should just be situated within the domesticated affairs and within the domesticated spheres is really rejected by Astell, and she comes off as this feminist icon here as well. So she says that thus ignorance and a narrow education, very important, lay the foundation of vice, and imitation and custom rear it up. Okay, so she pronounces these as vices, that narrow education, ignorance, imitation, custom. You can really note all these four things and really talk about them in your answers and everything. These contradictions and variations, however, in her thoughts and arguments make one contemplate whether she is a true feminist or not, and we will discuss this fact later on in this session. Astra's feminism is evident in her thought that even though a woman should be educated in virtue, it must be accompanied by a refinement of her understanding. So, at a point in this essay, she says that it is not merely okay that a woman must be educated in virtue, it should be equally important that she reaches a very defined state of her understanding of her mind. And she says at one point that men, or or society in general, should not consider that women are insufficient, or they're not as capable of understanding things as men do, because we are very much capable. So she very well says that. Okay, Now, what is her proposal? This is a very important thing. That what is this proposal that is included in the title to this essay? This proposal actually is to erect a monastery, right? Or if you will, we will call it a religious retirement, and as such shall have a double aspect, being not only a retreat from the world. Okay, so this monastery will be like an institute of education for women. It will be like a retreat from the world for those who desire that advantage, but likewise an and previous discipline to fit us to do the greatest good in it. Such an institution as this would be the most probable method to amend the present and improve the future age. So, Astell here says that this institution will serve as uh, a ground for women to better themselves for the present as well as for the future. So this whole idea of how women should be educated and taught things so that they should be able to rear the future generations in a better manner. This could very well be seen in both the ways of why should only women be why should only women be responsible for upholding that idea of morality or religious duty and piety in society? But when we consider the time period in which Astell was writing, it is important to consider that women were not taken into account in matters of education, philosophy, or even religion for that matter. So her deciding to go further with this idea that women should be given a mind and the education and the chance to think by themselves what they want to do with their own life and how they want to be and erect their own stature. This is very important considering the time period in which she was in. So her idea of building such an institution, of such a monastery or such a retreat from the world, is to allow women to explore their own minds and really think for themselves what they want to do, with their lives, with their understanding. So, for here, those who are convinced of the emptiness of earthly enjoyments, who are sick of the vanity of the world and its impertinencies, may find more substantial and satisfying entertainments and need not be confined to what they justly loathe. So, she's saying that if you are bored with the vanity of the world, and she's specifically talking to women, that if you're bored with clothes and jewelries and accessories and household and husbands and men, and all those vanities that women are expected to follow or be enchanted with. If she says that if you are bored with this, if you have grown or outgrown all of this, this is a place for you to come. So she is really rejecting that idea as well, that a woman is only limited to enjoy the fantasies and fancies of life. Here her proposal is for women to come and see for themselves and enlarge in their minds and try to go beyond that limited understanding that they have created for their own selves. So, up until now, we have seen how Aster is a woman of changing times, right? She has these modern ideas, but she is still limited in her idea of female emancipation, right? She contends that it is not to say that women should teach in the church or usurp authority where it is not allowed. They focus on this word that she mentions, that women should not usurp authority where it is not allowed them. Okay? Permit us only to understand our own duty. This is what she says, that our responsibility here and our request here is to just to understand our own duty. So she is limiting women and female empowerment and emancipation only to the confines of religion, of church, of duties. And this is where her whole idea becomes, goes away from the whole feminist thought of today's, of the present time at least, or the present times at least. um, so Right, so this is what she says, that our aim here is just to be at least so far learned, learn it as to be able to form in our minds a true idea of Christianity. So this idea of Christianity, of the church, this is this is being reiterated again and again and again. This is being reiterated, right? So this is very important. Her idea of what is a woman is closely linked with what is a true devout Christian woman. Very important. The age-old idea of duty on the basis of which women have been restrained until today. This very fact leads her away from the feminists of the later ages, and she's doing just what the very next pastor does. Okay, so her ideas are of holy living and right believing, and that no heresy is more dangerous than that of an ungodly and wicked life. Astell, however, also asks women to engage in the study of philosophy, to read French philosophers rather than novels and romances. Okay, so this one point we have discussed before. So Astell is therefore against limiting womanhood uh, to outer show and appearance, right? She is against the limitation of that is imposed upon womanhood to just outer shows and appearances and beauty. But again, she is confining womanhood, this very womanhood, which is emancipated in her manner, to the confines of religion. So this contradiction, this contrast, this duality is very important for us as readers to consider when we read Astell's work. uh, Religion itself imposes many restrictions upon women. This also we have discussed. So in this slide we are discussing this duality, that is found in the work of Mary Astell here. When we move towards the middle of the essay, now we have come to the middle of the essay. Astell is seen here differentiating between the body and the mind. She is a writer who is trying to, comprehend the human soul, and she's trying to uplift the human soul and put it on a pedestal much above the body. Okay, so she's saying that there is a difference between the body and the mind, but what governs both of them is passion. So she's saying that in order to govern the mind, you have to first govern human passions. And here, by passions, she's insinuating or hinting at the bodily passions, the sexual passions. And she's saying to women that you must limit them in order to, rise above this mundane and, mortal human life. So this whole idea of how women have always been asked to go away from their bodies, to not be in touch with their sexual desires, is seen again in the work of Astell. So this point differs her from future feminists such as Adrienne Rich, who aim towards the expression of the female body. So Adrienne Rich really talks about the female body, the expression of it in general terms, and also in works of literature, and how it is important for women to know, talk, and discuss about female bodies because they have been driven away from them for the longest time. So Esther says she wants these changes to be applied on the body as well as to the mind. So this differentiation between the body and the mind, between the body and the soul, is very important in this work of Esther. The animals. So she says the animal spirits, right? The animal spirits must be lessened or rendered more calm and manageable. At least they must not be unnaturally and violently moved by such a diet or such passions, designs, and divertisements as are likely to put them in a ferment. Okay, so contemplation requires a governable body. Okay. This means that you must govern your body. You must have a steady mind, and the body and the mind do so reciprocally influence each other. Okay, so the mind and the body are interconnected, and to control one is to control the other. Okay, so we can scarce keep the one in tune if the other be out of it. Okay, so we can neither observe the errors of our intellect nor the irregularity of our morals whilst we are darkened by fumes, agitated with unruly passions, or carried away with eager desires after sensible things and vanities. So here she is talking about both vanities of general life as well as the vanities of sexual passions and desires. Okay, so both these ideas can be talked about here. We must therefore withdraw our minds from the world, from adhering to the senses, from the love of material beings, of pomps and gaieties, for 'tis these that usually steal away the heart, that seduce the mind to such unaccountable wanderings, and so fill up its capacity that they leave no room for truth. So she is saying that to have truth, to really engage with God, and to really, um, have virtue in our lives, we have to move away from the passions of everyday life, from the vanities of everyday life, and she's not explicitly mentioning about sexual encounters and sexual passions, but it can very well be contemplated from this very fact. Okay, so now the next slide. Towards the end of Towards the end of the essay, Astell claims and reasserts her primary argument that the only thing necessary is to be good Christians, and we may be that without being philosophers. Okay, so she's again and again asserting the very first point that she had made in the very start, that we have to be good Christians, and this is her, the primal thing that she's talking about. And because she's saying this in verbatim, it is very important here to clearly mention this in our discussions, that her work is not just limited to the feminist, or the feminist renderings, or the feminist undertone that it has, but it is more or less an agenda that she carries, you know um, an aim that she carries of reinstilling this Christianity in people once again. Her argument against fashion may very well be an insinuation to women for not engaging in bodily or sexual pursuits. Okay, and I quote, and as to the influence that another person's passion may have on us, enough has been said to warn us not to dally with the flame when our neighbor's house is on fire, lest we be consumed in it, and carefully to avoid doing anything which may excite or increase their passions. Okay, so great passions arise from very small beginnings, and that which appeared innocent at first, if allowed on that account, does often become our ruin, or gives us at least the greatest trouble in overcoming it. Okay, so it is here that she really clearly mentions of this hint, at sexual passions and bodily desires, and this is what she's talking about, and this is a sort of a warning that she gives to women, that passion really will destroy the virtue that you have in your heart. And this is a point for debate and discussion, but this is her point of view that she carries forward in this essay. In her conclusion, Astell reiterates that her method is the best method for women and their improvement. So, whatever she has discussed up until now, she says that whatever I'm proposing to you, remember, this is a proposal. This is something that she is proposing to women, that whether, she does not know whether they will like it or not, but she is almost certain that they will, because it is, in her opinion, the best method for women and their improvement. So when it comes to feminism, now this is the point of discussion that we must have, that uh, is Astell really a feminist, or is she just a writer who's trying to portray or put forward her point of view, and is trying to push forward the agenda that she has in her mind. So Astell is a radical feminist, first of all, in a strong stance against men and their follies. So she is very sarcastic and very witty, and she condemns men and their follies, and their advantages and extra benefits that they carry just because they are men. So she is radical in that stance. She says, as for those who think so contemptibly of such a considerable part of God's creation, as to suppose that we were made for nothing else but to admire and do them service. So she's talking about men, that those people who think that as women we are made for nothing else but to admire men and to serve them. It is not true. And to make provision for the low concerns of an animal life. So, low concerns of an animal life. We pity their mistake. This is what she says, that we as women pity their mistake and can calmly bear their scoffs, for they do not express so much contempt of us as they do of our Maker. Right? So she's very 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 witty and very sarcastic, and she has this very this undertone, or this, even an overtone of offense. So she says, therefore the reproach of such incompetent judges is not an injury but an honor to us. So in no way is Mary Astell comparing herself to or women to men and thinking that we as women are inferior. No, she is, I think, saying that men do not know any better than to judge or be incompetent judges. This is her viewpoint, and she says that we as women therefore must take charge of our own lives, of our own understanding, and that is why we should really decide for our own lives what as devout Christian women we must do. So she is an embodiment of the radical feminism in this ideology of how she views men and how she talks about them. But she is also an embodiment of Walter's female face in her idea that women must rise above vanity and show and form their own minds. So Elaine Showalter had propounded the three phases of So the three phases are feminine, feminist, and the female phase. Okay, so Elaine Showalter had talked about these phases, and she said that the feminine phase is when women are trying to imitate men. Okay, in their writings, there is nothing new that they are able to express in their writings. The feminist phase is when they approach a radical, kind of an end, and they start to have a very radical kind of an approach in their writings. The third phase is the female phase, where they are not trying to either imitate men, which was what they were trying to do in the first phase. They are not even trying to protest against or resent men, which they are trying to do in the second phase. In the last phase, which is the female phase, they're simply trying to voice their own voices and talk about their own lives and not depend on men or patriarchy, on any kind of matter or content that they want to write about. They're simply writing about their own experiences as women and their own voices. So Mary Astell is trying to embody the female face. Of course she's not trying to, but in her idea that women must rise above vanity and show and form their own minds is a reflection upon what Showalter is trying to say in the female phase, that what women do in this phase. Okay, but she also embodies, Mary Astell also embodies the first phase of Showalter's gynocriticism, which is the feminine phase, in which there is a limitation on what women are able to express and write about. So this is where Mary Astell is saying that her arguments are rather dependent on the control of other institutions on the definition of womanhood. By this I mean that she's talking about female empowerment. She's talking about enlarging the minds of women, but her arguments are rather dependent more on how religion should be that institution which should define what an ideal woman is. So this kind of a restraint and this kind of a limitation on womanhood is what backtracks the entire process of this feminist kind of an undertone or overtone that this work of Mary Astell had. So this we can also analyze this work by these three phases, by reference to these three phases of Elaine Showalter. At the end of everything, however, what Astell contends for is women doing their own part, and this somewhere gives women an identity beyond men and their households, which was what women were expected to do at that point of time. So, after this discussion, can we really term Mary Astell as a feminist? First of all, there are two parts to this answer. She cannot be termed a feminist according to the ideals or discourse of feminism that we have today, right? There are many problems, there are many issues, there are many loopholes, and which is why people today will not really accept her as a feminist icon. However, keeping in mind the times in which she wrote, she did give a different voice and perspective to the women of her age. This is very important because her works should not be analyzed by the ideals of today, rather by the conventions of our times. Okay, so Astell and her work gave women the idea, or even the brief, the introduction of such an idea, that they can very well rise above households, above their husbands, men, their families, above clothes and jewels and accessories and romance novels. And this work really would have made them think of sublime things, okay, things that perhaps seem to us very mundane, in the present time period. But at that point of time, even this thought that women could enjoy philosophy or think or have their own understanding about religion, about God, and not just depend upon the interpretations that are imparted to them by people, is a very big thing. So this is the reason why she is a feminist, specifically keeping in mind the ideals of her time, the conventions of her time, and the time period to which she belonged. She ends her essay by saying that women have been continuously doing the labor of love, and that despite all impediments, they must do so further too, as it will only enlarge our triumphs. Okay, so she's saying that women have continuously been doing the labor of love, and she is not depending on men for the realization of this labor, and she's simply saying that we have that power, we have that tolerance, and we have that emotional understanding. And it does not matter whether men understand it, whether men reciprocate it, but this labor of love, this labor of virtue, this labor of ingenuity is simply adding, it is adding feathers to our cap, and it is adding to our triumphs of what we are as women. Okay, so her biggest aim is for women to strive to the highest improvement, very important. And no matter how many prudent obstacles or doubts come their way, they must strive to set no other rules than those of the gospel. She's saying that no other rules are applied on you other than that of the gospel, other than that of the Almighty. And Christianity is the highest improvement of rational nature. So her whole idea is dependent upon Christianity, upon the gospel, and the ideals of the church, right? So she says that this embodiment of the virtuous woman, of the pious woman, of the correct woman, um, it is dependent upon Christianity, and we must strive as women, as Christian women, as Christians, to achieve this highest improvement, which is of a rational kind, and this is what Christianity and the gospel prescribes to us. Okay. Um, so this we have discussed what the times of the 1690s were like. So in such times, even though this work is a product of a Christian's treatise on re-establishing the order of morality amongst the very builders of families, which are women, right? So women at that point of time, and even today, they are thought to be the very foundation of families, right? So even though this work is like a propaganda or an agenda of a Christian woman to re-establish this order of morality in times when this morality and this religion and this faith was facing a blow, it nonetheless gives women of our age an access to a different type of knowledge, a different type of voice, a different type of perspective, right? So all of this they were earlier denied. So this work, even though it could be, it could be read just as a didactic kind of a preaching, or having some kind of a backdrop or agenda, it nonetheless gives women, the women to which this work is addressed it gives them a different kind of a voice. It gives them a new perspective shift, and it gives them an idea of what more they can do. So this is why this work still is a work of feminist literature, is a work of feminist criticism, no matter how many contradictions it has. Okay, so we have to judge it on the basis of the times in which it was written, and not by today's standards. Okay, so yes, now we have come to the conclusion, which is that Astell claims, and I quote, "But I know not how the men will resent it to have their enclosure broke down, and women are invited to taste that treat of knowledge they have so long unjustly monopolized." So she says that I know not how the men will react to this proposal I'm putting forward, and I do not know how they will react to their enclosure, their monopoly upon knowledge, their monopoly, their authority and right that they have exhibited exhibited on the tree of knowledge, on the tree of understanding up until now, this proposal of mine is trying to break that down. So I do not know how the men will react, but and they do not they I do not know how they will react to how when women are being invited to taste that tree of knowledge that they have so long unjustly monopolized. Okay, so again and again she is commenting upon men, and she's pointing out their little follies here and there. So Astell, in relation to her times, so mind you, she's not a man hater, okay? She's just a woman who's trying to voice her opinion. And this very fact that she's doing it so freely in a time when women were not really allowed to speak that much, they were only, expected somehow. These changes were just coming at that point of time, and they had not come even in full bloom. So this is why this work again is a work of feminist literature, where a woman is putting forward her opinion, no matter whether you like it or not, whether we as readers like it or not, and whether we resonate with it or not. So Esther, in relation to her times, was a feminist who has now been forgotten or is judged too quickly. So on the note that we began the session, it is to be seen that we might have judged her too quickly, and we might have judged her on the basis of the initial argument that she was putting. But when we read the entire text, when we read the entire essay, we realize that she is really a woman who is speaking her mind, and she is giving a new perspective shift. Again and again, I'm repeating that on the basis of her times. Okay, she wrote in a time when women were denied the access to religion on their own. They were not allowed to, like, nobody was really allowed to. This is why these reformations and everything, these revolutions and everything happened, and religion was going through a period of change. But women specifically, they were really not allowed to have their own understanding, or they really did not have the opportunity to have their own understanding that much. So this was a time when Puritanism had just ended, and Restoration had begun in 1660, right? So 1649 to 1660, the age of the Puritan age was there. So the Restoration, therefore, was not just of religious ideals, but also of women's right to interpret the holy on their own, and in this process enlarging their own minds. Okay, uh, they are trying to enlarge their minds, and they are trying to go beyond the traditional kind of a knowledge, or the traditional kind of a teaching that was imparted to them. And through this work, Astell is trying to merely say that, so she's just trying to say that women have the right to interpret the holy on their own, and to have that understanding, and have that opportunity to frame their own understanding. Okay, so through this work, we interpret how Mary Astell, she is a woman who is writing about in a time when women were really not given that much advantage over how they want to frame their own minds. So she, through this work, is trying to assert that point that women must rise above beauty and their very mundane things of and vanities of life, and try to strive to be good Christian women, and follow religion and follow virtue, and develop in themselves an understanding and reflection on their own minds. So this whole idea is somewhere based on religion, but nonetheless, we see in this work a very sharp critical commentary on men, and how the society was also at that time not allowing women to pursue that understanding and reflection upon things that are more sublime. So this is what Mary Astell is trying to convey, that women should try to go rise above the mundane things of life, and move towards more sublime aspects, and they must derive their virtue from religion, and allow themselves to have their own understanding and their own frame of mind. Okay, so right. So even though this whole idea is deriving its basis from religion, what Astell is really trying to say, that women must have their own frame of mind and their own understanding, and they should follow the path and duty that they were prescribed, follow the rules of the gospel. And somewhere, and the gist of this work is that women must have their own understanding, and have and start to think about their own thoughts, and have a reflection on their own thoughts. So this is what she is trying to say in this entire work. Okay, so Okay, so Astell is saying that as women, we must realize that we are not just meant for vanities and fancies and romance novels and households. We are meant for bigger things, and through the path of religion and Christianity, we will be able to reach our state of highest improvement. And we must use virtue and ingenuity and religion to form our own minds and to form our own understanding and to make ourselves the best of what we can. So this is the gist of the entire work, and this work is very important because of these aspects that we have discussed up until now. Please keep the contradictions in mind, please keep the contrasts in mind, but at the same time just keep this gist of the overall work, what Astell is trying to primarily say, and why this work really became or could become, or is the first work of feminist literature but is now forgotten. So that would be all from my end. Please follow me for more such content, and thank you so much for watching.